This video deals with the subject of death in a way that some people might find disturbing. Hello and welcome. In this video I will look at and discuss the phenomenon of the Western pop cultural zombie and its popularity.
Zombies, huh? Had a feeling you'd show up.
Zombies are used in many types of entertainment mediums such as movies, games, TV series and even music, and the consumers can't seem to get enough of them. That has led to a variety of pseudoscientific reasons for the existence of zombies and varying characteristics. This in turn leads to fans arguing about whether zombies should be able to run or rather just shamble, if they die from gunshot wounds to the body, or if you have to shoot them in the head to stop them from rising again, not to mention their diet. No matter the answer to these conundrums, the zombies seem to be here to stay, and now infest historical, modern and science fiction settings, as well as fantasy and post-apocalyptic worlds. This leads me to the question, what makes the pop cultural zombie so timeless? First of all, we need to define what entails a pop cultural zombie. When I use the term, I mean specifically the modern idea of an individual that has died and risen as an undead that attacks humans and sometimes eats their flesh, or in some cases brains. The word zombie comes from Haitian French or Haitian Creole and is in Haitian folklore a corpse reanimated through magic and becoming a slave to its master's will. But there is nothing indicating that these risen dead eat human flesh or brains. In the folklore of other places in the world, similar mythological creatures exist, like the Draugr of Old Norse mythology, who were believed to be restless dead who defended their barrow mounds from grave robbers. They were also believed to possess an insatiable hunger and needed to be decapitated to return to a dead state. That a person would turn into a Draugr could be seen on their posture. If they were sitting or standing up instead of lying horizontally, this was believed to be an indication that they may return. As such, they could be destroyed by breaking the posture and laying them to rest. In the early 18th century, when Austria gained control of northern Serbia, officials noted a local practice where the dead would be dug up and killed again by driving stakes through them. These dead were believed to be vampire, which is likely where the German vampire and the French vampire, and also later the English vampire, came from. These vampire would rise at night to suck the blood of the living and then return to their graves. This made the victims pale and weak and beset by hunger, while the vampire would grow fat and rosy-skinned from the diet. Now that doesn't sound like the stylish Dracula we know. Well, as it were, Bram Stoker actually wrote vampires as a ghoul-like monster.
Well now, that's a surprise.
And Dracula was an exception. He was written as an individual who through intensive training and discipline forced himself to retain his aristocratic composure. It's kind of funny how that became the template for many modern vampires. So how about them ghouls? A ghoul, or ghoul as they're called in Arabic folklore, dwell in cemeteries and feast on human flesh. Some people name George A. Romero as the creator of the modern pop culture zombie, but interestingly enough, Romero used the term ghoul to describe his undead in Night of the Living Dead. In fact, they never used the term zombie throughout the whole movie. So why do so many think of him and his movie trilogy when they hear the word zombie? Well, the first zombie movie was actually White Zombie, which was released in 1932. There the viewers were presented with dark voodoo magic and a mindless slave type of zombie. It would seem that for some reason fans and critics just took to calling Romero's creatures zombies as well, after the movie release, through some unknown misunderstanding. Seemingly George A. Romero accepted this renaming, and while they still don't use the word in dialogue in the trilogy's second movie, Dawn of the Dead, they are still listed as zombies in the credits. When I mention music, I specifically think of Gorillaz, who branded their music zombie hip-hop when they released their first album. Their characteristic art style is created by Jamie Hewlett, who also created the Tank Girl comic, and both artwork and music contains references to pop culture zombies, such as the haunting sample from Romero's movie Day of the Dead in the intro of the track M1A1, and Frontman 2D wearing a long-sleeve two-color t-shirt with the text T-Virus on the chest, which any Resident Evil fans will recognize as a reference to the Tyrant virus. Movies containing zombies are countless, and utilize a variety of sources for their existence, ranging from extraterrestrial in the Australian movie Undead from 2003, radiation in Romero's original Night of the Living Dead from 1968, infectious emotional rage in the movie 28 Days Later from 2002, a mutant strain of mad cow disease in the Irish movie Dead Meat from 2004, and in the 2009 Norwegian movie Dead Snow, zombies arise to defend their ill-gotten treasures from thieves.
So you're saying those things are zombies?
I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of messed up supervirus. Maybe it's radiation from outer space, or black magic, or the wrath of almighty frickin' God.
Most Western zombie movies have in common that they're tragedies, as in the form of drama. Aristotle wrote about this, and roughly about 2 pages has been preserved, commonly called Aristotle's Poetics. His writings have to a great degree shaped how plays and movies have been and still are written for almost 3,000 years. A tragedy distinguishes itself in that it's the actions and choices of the characters that decide if they will be happy or unhappy, or, in the case of zombie movies, if they live or die, rather than their background story or traits. Over this, most Western movies about zombies apply a filter of values, or a decided upon truth that dictates which choices and actions are good and which are bad. This value filter is usually a child of its time and ranges from general concepts like honesty and generosity, through the 7 deadly sins of Catholicism, to Christian values such as chastity, the latter being an often used trope in slasher movies. Even repentance is sometimes considered a good choice or action. This all becomes very clear when one watches a zombie movie. The expressed truth can be used as a checklist by the viewer to immediately know if a certain character will live or die based on their actions or choices. I will get back to this in a bit, but first let's ask ourselves, where do the zombies fit into all of this? The zombies are nothing but a coulies or backdrop. They're unthinking and unfeeling and presented as a force of nature, and they are a symbol of death. They represent the unrelenting approach of death that finally consumes all of us. You can knock a zombie down, but it gets up again. You can outrun them, but eventually you have to stop and rest.
Run! Run! Shit, there's too many of them!
Just like the years of our lives trudges on slowly towards the inevitable end, so do the zombies. In a tragedy, this is known as the power of the gods, and no mortal can put themselves above that. If they do, that is considered a bad choice. Consider, for example, what often happens to nonchalant characters who think they can win over the zombies in some way, or who disregard their threat. There is another frequent use of zombies in movies, and that is to exact revenge. Anyone who has watched a few Hollywood movies will know the revenge story is heavily overused for good or bad, but it mostly assumes the revenge taker is a sentient being. In those stories you will often see one or more antagonists, and a lot of time is spent presenting those characters in a way that will make the audience dislike them and be frustrated that they're allowed to do whatever it is that they are doing. At the end of the story, the antagonist is usually exacted revenge upon by the main protagonist to create catharsis in the audience. Compare this to how zombie movies use the tragedy form of drama to present characters' actions as bad, reinforcing the audience's dislike of the character and eventually punish them with an early death. Here I get back to if a character's bad actions will net them a life loss or not. There are a couple of commonly seen tropes where a character who makes bad choices but later sees the error of their ways is allowed to live, or in some cases at the very least sacrifice themselves heroically for the greater good. You can also find examples of 2 characters making the same bad action, but one of them admits openly that it's bad and is spared, while the other defends the action and is punished. So how does all this carry over into gaming?
The hell was that? These things belong in video games.
Well, first, I'd like to separate zombie games into two piles. One I will call zombie shooters, where the game predominantly focuses on destroying zombies en masse. The other group I will call zombie stories, in lack of a better term, and by this I mean games that focus on the storytelling around the survivors. There are plenty of zombie shooters out there, and they can be fun. However, I will say that personally I find them repetitive. Once you've played a few of them, it seems like you've played them all. Nothing really changes. Why? Well, because they're not telling a tragedy. You're overcoming the power of the gods and nobody punishes you for your actions. It becomes flat and you could just as well go to a shooting range or shoot something else but zombies. The exception here is when the gameplay revolves around surviving waves of increasing difficulty or tower defense mechanics, but in those cases it's still not the zombies that make the game, but rather the gameplay mechanics. While your character may be punished for making the wrong actions in such a game, the actions really don't carry any greater value, and buying the wrong rifle isn't really memorable. The zombie stories are the story-heavy games where zombies are used as a backdrop, and where the story centers on the survivors struggling to make the right decisions. And what I'm getting at, as most of you might realize by now, is that this perfectly carries over into the computer and video game world, and specifically story-heavy games like RPGs. Because what is a game if not a series of choices? Here is where the zombie game genre shines, and what many games have tried to reach, and some succeeded and some failed. The thousands of years old form of drama called tragedy, and the thousands of years old fear of death and revenge from restless spirits combined into a formula for storytelling where the actions of people decide their fate rather than their nature. There, a cosmic justice punishes those who do wrong and blesses those who are righteous with a few more days of life. However, as in many true tragedies, everyone loses in the end. If not their lives, they have at least lost some days of it as time has passed. They've lost friends and loved ones or some of their sanity. Either way, it all ends eventually, just like this video. Please leave a like and let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.